Hi everybody, it's Marie Fell from the Pilates Physio. I just want to expand on the post I did yesterday about are you pelvic floor ready for running, just to run through a few tips with the pelvis and just to explain the wording of the guidelines that have been written in the Return to Running postnatal guidelines that were published this year. So when we're thinking about the pelvic floor, we're thinking about the muscles in the floor of the pelvis, the basin. They're like a bowl, so they run sort of from the sides all the way across and then front to back, and then obviously there, the red bits underneath, you can see here where they are in the basin of our pelvis. So what we need to understand about our pelvic floor muscles is that they have two types of muscle fibers. They have fast twitch muscle fibers and slow twitch muscle fibers. So the type 1 muscle fibers are the endurance, slow acting muscle fibers that work to keep the strength there and hold things in when we need to hold stuff. So if you're queuing in the toilets in like Marks and Spencer's, for example, and there's a big queue and you need to hold that wee in until you get your turn to go to the toilet, they're the type 1, they're the endurance muscle fibers. So a bit like your marathon runner muscles, they need to keep going for longer periods of time. And then we have the short, fast twitch muscle fibers, which are your type 2 fibers that act strong and quick. So that if, for example, you cough or sneeze or do something suddenly that has an impact on your pelvic floor, they'll kick into action quickly and they'll stop you from leaking, hopefully. So with that in mind, thinking about these guidelines that have been produced for running, they encourage you to be able to do these in standing. So in postnatal terms, that is like with the gravity, putting as much force down through the pelvic floor. So when you've just had a baby, you might find that you need to work your pelvic floor muscles in this position, lying down on your back, or even some ladies need to like invert the pelvis, put it on some cushions and pillows and actually work that pelvic floor with gravity completely offloaded. So we can start here, then we can progress to lying. We might go to side lying, this position, before we progress to sitting, before we progress to then standing, and that changes the amount of gravity and load we're putting down through the pelvic floor. So the guidelines recommend that we can do 10 fast squeezes in succession. So that's where you squeeze the pelvic floor muscles as firmly and tightly and as strongly as you can for 1 second, and then you relax, lengthen, release, let go. And it's really important we encourage ladies when they're doing these that yes, they squeeze as tight and firm and as fast as they can, but they relax, release, lengthen, let go for at least 2 or 3 seconds afterwards. So in succession, it would be squeeze, relax, lengthen, let go, squeeze, relax, lengthen, release, squeeze, relax, lengthen, and so on, 10 times in a row. So that would be a tick for your first bit on the pelvic floor recommendations. The second bit talks about a maximum voluntary contractions. So that is being able to squeeze your pelvic floor as firmly and as strong as you can while still being able to breathe and do 8 to 12 repetitions with a 6 to 8 second hold. So what does that mean? That basically means that when you're doing your pelvic floor squeeze, that if you were, for example, to take that lovely breath in, as you breathe out, squeeze through the back, squeeze the middle, squeeze the bladder, activate your pelvic floor, I still breathe and talk to you while doing that as strong squeeze as I can, and I can count up to 6 seconds or 8 seconds before I fully relax, release and lengthen, and then I do 8 to 12 repetitions of those in a row to get the tick against that one. So maximum voluntary contraction, a bit like the biceps, you're working it to its maximum strength, but it's important you can still breathe, always important with the pelvic floor that we don't breath hold. And then the third recommendation is that you can do a 60-second hold of your pelvic floor at a sub-maximum contraction, which is guided at about 30 to 50%. Now, if you've practiced Pilates in the past, that's kind of the method that we work on in Pilates. We're setting the muscles in the background, so we're switching them on, we're activating them. There's a light hold, so we know they're active, but they're not so active that we're really focusing on that one muscle, for example. And we should be able to hold that for up to a minute. So again, you would breathe in and out during this time, and you would just have that muscle humming away in the background. And that takes some doing to be able to feel that sort of percentage, if you like. So it's good to start off with a maximum voluntary. You're pulling it in and squeezing it as much as you can while still being able to breathe. And then you're backing off to 50% and 30%, and then just having it working in the background. So for example, when you're doing Pilates, you should be able to set your center, pelvic floor, and then do your exercise for a minute. Still being able to breathe, still being able to feel that you've got that gentle hum in the background working. So I hope that helps a little bit explain what the 3 recommendations mean. We also just need to touch a little bit on when you're doing your pelvic floor exercises, for example, here's the back passage at the back, here's the middle passage of the vagina and the front passage of the bladder. As pelvic health physios, we encourage all ladies to try and squeeze their back passage closed. Imagine they're not letting wind out, and squeeze and close that anus sphincter shut. And then you want to imagine that you're drawing the wind from the back of the pelvis, from the back of that anus muscle, forward in towards the pubis bone. So you're squeezing it closed at the back and drawing that imaginary wind up into the pelvis. And then the same at the middle, we squeeze closed and up. And then the bladder, we squeeze closed and we lift it up towards the belly button region. So you're getting the pelvic floor muscles shutting and also lifting. It's a squeeze and lift action that you want to feel when you're doing your pelvic floor. We always try and encourage from the back towards the front, because the sling then activates and captures all the muscles. So hopefully you can see here, there's a lot of musculature there around the back passage. Yeah, the bladder's a lot smaller, the back passage is a lot easier, so it's easier to feel the squeeze, in theory, around that passage there at the back. So I hope that helps give you a little whistle-stop tour of pelvic floor, how, what, where, why, in terms of returning to running. And please note that this is a progression, you know, you work it up towards this. So you may need to start, like I said at the beginning, in that sort of reversed anti-gravity position with the cushions under your bottom and your bottom slightly lifted before you progress to the different postures before you get to that standing. So regress to progress, and that's what you're aiming for before you start loading and running through your pelvis again. Bye for now.